The candlelight was soft, golden, like it knew secrets we hadn't said aloud yet. He leaned in across the table, fingers lazily circling the rim of his wine glass, and asked it so casually it almost felt like a joke. "Do you trust me?" I smiled. "With what?" He didn't answer. Just tilted his head slightly, studying me. The kind of look that made your skin remember touches that hadn't happened yet. We'd been playing this game for weeks. Flirtations that danced on the edge, kisses that lasted just a second too long, teasing whispers when no one else was close enough to hear. But tonight felt different. He'd taken me to this little rooftop place I'd never heard of. All ivy-covered brick, low music, the scent of night jasmine drifting in like something intentional. The city glowed beneath us, blurred and distant, as if the world had stepped back to give us space. He reached for my hand then, slow and deliberate, and when his fingers laced with mine, something inside me tightened. "Come with me," he said softly. I followed without asking. Down a narrow hallway, past a heavy wooden door that clicked shut behind us with the kind of finality that makes you feel like you've just agreed to something you can't take back. Inside, the lighting was lower, warmer, softer. And then I saw it, the second glass of wine on the table. Poured. Waiting. There was someone else. Before I could speak, I felt his hand on my lower back, guiding me forward gently, firmly. "She's waiting," he murmured, lips near my ear. "Only if you say yes." My breath caught. My body betrayed me first. A shiver, a throb, a pulse that didn't ask permission. And suddenly I wasn't sure who I was more afraid of, him or myself. Trust is such a lovely word until it asks you to prove it. I stood there, not moving, not breathing really. He was behind me. I could feel the heat of him, the steadiness of his presence, the tension humming in the space between us. The table in front of me was small, intimate. 2 chairs, 2 glasses, 1 flickering candle. And her. She sat there already, legs crossed, her expression unreadable but calm. Like she'd done this before. Like she knew I hadn't. She was beautiful but not in the way that felt threatening. She had that soft kind of confidence, the kind that doesn't try to impress, it just is. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The moment already said too much. My chest felt tight. It wasn't that I didn't want to move. It was that I did. And that realization scared me more than anything. Because this wasn't just about trust. It was about control. About surrender. About letting go of the version of myself that always needed to know what came next. He stepped beside me now, close enough that our arms brushed. "She's here for you," he said. "For us." I turned my head toward him slowly, heart racing. "Why?" I asked. He studied me, his voice low and careful. "Because I want to see what happens when you stop trying to be good." That word good sank into me like a challenge. I had always played safe. Flirted with danger from the other side of the glass. Dipped my toes into fantasies without ever really diving in. But now the water was warm. And I was already standing at the edge. "Sit," he said gently. "Let her pour for you." I did. She smiled as she reached for the bottle, and her fingers brushed mine, soft, almost reverent. I felt it everywhere. He sat next to me, his hand resting on the back of my chair. Protective. Proud. "Tonight's not about rules," he whispered. "It's about what happens when we let go of them." I raised the glass to my lips, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of what it would mean to say yes. Some doors open only when you stop knocking and walk straight through. The wine was deep, smooth, and darker than it looked in the glass. Like something old and dangerous. I sipped slowly, trying to steady my breath. She watched me. Not with hunger, but with something quieter. Like curiosity. Like permission. He didn't speak now. He just sat back, one arm draped behind my chair, the other resting on his thigh, fingers tapping softly. Like he was keeping time to a song only he could hear. She reached for me first. Not in a rush. Not with pressure. Just a light touch. The back of her fingers grazing my wrist, a kind of question she wasn't asking out loud. My skin reacted before I could. And I hated how much I loved it. He noticed. Of course he did. I could feel his gaze like heat along my cheekbone. "You're shaking," he said, almost amused. I wasn't. Not visibly. But something inside me was unraveling thread by thread. She leaned in closer now. Her scent was soft, earthy, almost floral, like she carried springtime with her. I don't want to take anything from you, she said, her voice low, barely above a whisper. I just want to be what you give. And somehow that undid me more than anything else. Because there's something terrifying about being desired without demand. Her fingers slid higher, brushing the inside of my arm. My pulse thudded under her touch. I didn't move away. I looked over at him. He wasn't smiling, not exactly. But his eyes were locked on mine, dark, steady, like he was silently daring me to keep going. This was the game. Every move was a choice. Every choice had a consequence. She leaned forward, her lips a breath away from my ear. He said you're hard to read, she murmured. But I think I already know how you like to be watched. I exhaled, sharp, involuntary. And for a split second I forgot what shame felt like. There's a moment just before you cross a line when everything slows down. Not the world, you. Your thoughts stretch like honey. Your breath forgets what to do. Your body begins to move before your mind agrees. That's where I was. Her fingers were still on me, trailing upward, tracing a path like she was learning my body through intuition alone. And he didn't touch me. Not yet. But he watched. So completely it felt like a touch. Like pressure. Like ownership. I turned to look at him again, expecting permission or instruction. But all he gave me was silence. This is your choice. He didn't need to say it. His stillness screamed it. So I made one. I reached for her. I wasn't smooth about it. My hand trembled slightly as I brushed her hair behind her ear, as if that simple act somehow rewrote who I was. Her lips parted just barely. And I saw it, the same tension I was carrying. The same wanting just beneath the calm. He leaned in now, his breath warm at the side of my neck. You don't have to pretend, he murmured. Not tonight. His words slid down my spine like silk. She was facing me fully now, eyes searching. No rush. No pressure. She didn't need to convince me. My body was already ahead of my mind, leaning, shifting, drawn toward something it had never tasted, but suddenly couldn't live without. When our lips touched, it wasn't dramatic. It was slow, gentle, exploring. And then his hand landed lightly on the back of my neck, grounding me, reminding me that he was still here. Watching. Wanting. Not jealous. Pleased. I could feel it in the way he breathed. The quiet satisfaction. The pride. That was the part one didn't expect. How intimate it felt to be shared. Not because I was less, but because I was more. We weren't playing by anyone else's rules. We were making our own. Her kiss was unlike anything I'd known. Not just because she was a woman, but because of how she kissed me. Like she wasn't in a hurry. Like she already trusted that I'd come back for more. I kissed her harder, needing to feel something anchored, something real. My hand found her hip and she pressed into me with the softest sigh. A sound so delicate, it wrapped around my ribs like silk and stayed there. Then I felt him again behind me. Closer now. His hands didn't grab. They guided. One at my waist steadying. The other slid up my back so slowly, I could feel each breath deepen with it. And when he spoke, low and close to my ear, I nearly forgot we weren't alone. I've never wanted you more. It wasn't the words that undid me. It was the truth in them. Because this wasn't a performance. It was trust breaking open. She pulled back slightly, just enough to study my face. Her fingers stroked my jaw, grounding me in the moment. You okay? She whispered. It was such a small thing being asked. And yet it broke something loose in me. I nodded. Yes. Words failed me. They didn't matter. Because what I meant was, I've never felt this alive before. He moved to sit beside me again, his thigh brushing mine, his gaze still dark with something I didn't fully understand. But I didn't need to. I could feel his pulse in the way his fingers traced lazy patterns along my spine. She was kissing my collarbone now, her lips like breath, her hair falling around my shoulders. I leaned back slightly, head tipping, surrendering to the quiet chaos building in all three of us. The air felt thick, perfumed with heat and risk, and something so tender it almost hurt. This wasn't just seduction. This was a test of who I was willing to become. Time didn't move the same way anymore. It bent, folded, melted into breath and hands and the soft rustle of clothes that weren't quite gone, but no longer important. He was behind me again, his presence anchoring me like gravity. I felt his chest rise and fall with mine, his breath matching my rhythm. Or maybe I was matching his. Her hands were on my thighs now, slow and sure, and it felt like she was reading a story only I could tell. And I was floating, tethered only by the feel of their skin against mine. His lips brushed my shoulder just once, and it was all it took to send a tremor through me. "You're beautiful like this," he murmured, not as flattery but as fact. I believed him. For once I really did. She kissed the inside of my knee and I gasped, the kind of sound I'd never let myself make before. Not with him. Not with anyone. It wasn't about pleasure. It was about being seen. Completely. Shamelessly. He turned my face to him gently, fingers under my chin. And when our lips met, it felt like we were telling each other a secret no one else could understand. She watched us for a moment, her hand still resting on my leg. And then she smiled, slow, wicked, warm. There was no jealousy in her eyes. No competition. Just invitation. He whispered something to her I couldn't hear and she nodded. Then she moved behind me. And for a few seconds I was surrounded by both of them. Two sets of hands. Two different kinds of touch. His confident, claiming. Hers gentle, coaxing. I didn't know where to focus. My body didn't care. I was trembling now, in that exquisite way that happens only when everything you thought you could control is slipping through your fingers, and you're glad it is. They were both looking at me like I was something rare. Something worth unwrapping slowly. And I had never felt so wanted. I had never known silence could be this loud. No words, just breath, skin, and the soft sound of surrender. Her hands were in my hair now, brushing it back like she was learning every strand. His lips moved along my spine, leaving heat behind with every slow kiss. And I didn't know whether to melt or cry, because this wasn't just about being touched. It was about being held. Not just by their hands but by the moment itself. She was in front of me now, her forehead resting lightly against mine. Her voice barely audible. "Still okay?" God. The way she asked, soft, careful, protective. It undid me more than anything physical ever could. I nodded barely, my breath catching in my throat. Behind me, his fingers traced a line along my ribs, not demanding, just there. A steady reminder that I wasn't alone in this. My body was humming, tight and aching, every nerve on fire but not burning. Just alive. Their rhythm wasn't planned. It was instinctual, a dance with no choreography. He moved in sync with her, like they'd done this before. Or maybe they just understood each other on some level I couldn't explain. But somehow I didn't feel like an outsider. I was the center. And for the first time in my life I wasn't afraid of being too much. I felt his hand slide up, gently gripping the back of my neck, grounding me, while she pressed her lips to mine again, deeper this time. It was too much. And not enough. I felt myself unraveling. Not falling apart but being rearranged. Like this experience was putting pieces of me in places they were always meant to be. I didn't cry. But I could have. Not from sadness. From the weight of being touched like someone deserved to be touched. Not used. Not possessed. Adored. And I knew, even in that breathless moment between peaks, I'd never be the same after this. We didn't speak for a while after. Not because there was nothing to say, but because silence had finally become safe. We lay there together, tangled in something softer than sheets, warmer than skin. Her head rested on my shoulder. His fingers traced up scent patterns on my hip. The air smelled like wine, breath, and something faintly floral. A scent I would come to associate with her long after she was gone. No one asked what this meant. No one tried to define it. Because it didn't belong to the world outside that room. It belonged to us. To that night. That moment. That version of me I hadn't known existed until they pulled her out of hiding. She was quieter as she dressed, but not awkward. She smiled at me once, real and warm, then kissed me one last time. "I don't do forever," she whispered. "But I never forget." I believed her. And then she was gone. He didn't speak right away. Just pulled me back against his chest, letting the weight of the night settle between us. I felt different. Not broken. Not used. But opened. Like a door I hadn't known existed was now wide open. And whatever came next, I'd never be able to close it again. He kissed my neck slowly. "You were incredible," he said. But I didn't feel incredible. I felt real, raw, brave, and just a little afraid of how much more I suddenly wanted. Not more people, not more pleasure, more truth, more moments where I wasn't performing but simply existing, desired, understood, seen. And that's the thing no one tells you, that the most erotic part of any story isn't what you do. It's who you are when you stop trying to be someone else.